Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So, it's been an interesting couple of months. The whole sort of Me Too situation has revealed pretty much all of our favorite entertainers ever to be horrifying sex monsters. Literally too many men and women to name have stepped forward, told their stories, and publicly accused, well, it started with Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby, and now it's just a laundry list of powerful men, many of them in the entertainment business. So many allegations of sexual harassment, everything from being vulgar and inappropriate and knuckle draggy and ass slapping and things of that nature, down to, well, full-on assault and rape. So they've run the gamut. But the folks over at CNN made an interesting point, and they said what we'd all been thinking, I think. They said that, quote, one form of harassment has become a recurring theme. Do you know what form of harassment that is, Travis Golightly?
I don't know, and I kind of feel like guessing might not be the smartest thing right now.
Well, it's an interesting one because it's not something that I could ever even come close to relating to. This thing where Harvey Weinstein and Louis Ck force women to look at their disgusting, bloated Jabba the Hutt-esque bodies as they go to town on their pathetic little shriveled up tadgers, sometimes into a plant in the room. That's not something I can relate to at all. That's sort of like, okay, we want to be sciencey about this, but I guess you would call it unwanted masturbatory displays. You would call it that. And now we've got that term out of the way, let's just go, what the hell? Like, I don't relate to that even a little bit. And I thought at first it was because I'm English, which means I can feel self-conscious alone at home with the lights off, under the covers, in pajamas. I can still be like, nobody wants to deal with this. I should go put on another layer. Like, that's just me. I was raised with a firm belief in being unbelievably self-conscious, and that the human body, especially south of the equator, was a thing of shame, 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 and you shouldn't be showing it to anyone. But this completely unrelatable behavior to me, as it turns out, no one else is really into it either. Like, you would never do that to someone. I mean, even if they wanted you to, like, that would be a special treat for someone else. If they asked you to do that, you'd be like, okay, I don't feel comfortable, but I will. That's how it would go, right? Because that's the way it is for most people I've talked to. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, these days I'm not going to say for most people that anything is really off limits, but I don't know that I know anybody who would just be like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to do that. And number two, I didn't know that a plant was involved.
For Harvey Weinstein, it is, yes. Apparently, he did unspeakable things to plants in hotel rooms while he was blocking the door with his revolting, bloated carcass and not letting women out. It's disgusting. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's not normal.
And his version of it is, I mean, he's been straight up accused of rape. But this idea that anyone would get a kick out of that is just beyond me. And it's beyond a lot of people. And because it's been, like I said, a recurring theme, people have started to look into it and try and understand the psychology of this. The director of the Toronto Sexuality Center, a guy called James Cantor, said, this is exhibitionism, and it's an extreme form of it. The men who engage in this sort of thing rarely escalate. The exhibition, the actual display of the cash and prizes, is the goal. He didn't say cash and prizes. He said something more sciencey, but
right.
You get my meaning. But it's just weird. And here's the thing. It doesn't mean that the victims are any less traumatized than if actual physical touch happens. They're just as freaked out as if there'd been some sort of forced physical contact. And he said, quote, the rules have gone out the window and the victim doesn't know if this will escalate into violence or rape. It's unbelievably terrifying in many instances. So, yeah. But I guess the $1 million question is, I'll take a heaping helping of why? Why? It's just, like I said, it's unrelatable behavior to me. And this guy, this expert, Cantor, says it's difficult to know what causes this kind of behavior. And often people can spend years and years and thousands of dollars in therapy trying to figure this sort of thing out. There was another doctor, Dr. Prudence Gorgashan. She's the former president of the American Psychoanalytic Association. She told CNN that she thinks it comes from a wish to be looked at and admired. Do you think? I don't know. I don't think Harvey Weinstein, maybe Harvey Weinstein or Louis C.K. want to be looked at and admired, but they can't possibly think that while it's happening, that they're being, no woman is going, oh, wow. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to see. And by the way, have you been working out? That's not how this goes.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So ever since the Harvey Weinsteins of this world have started being outed as sexual predators, as people guilty of sexual misconduct, as people who are rapists and use their positions of power to manipulate their victims into vulnerable positions where they feel as though they A, have to comply with their sexual demands, and B, will lose their career if they say anything about it. Ever since this sort of glut of everybody in the entertainment business being a horrifying sex monster started, the thing that we've seen over and over again is that weird behavior, as we've been talking about. The Harvey Weinstein, Louis C.K. move, which is you force somebody to watch you go to town on yourself. And lots of people have been going, why? Why would anybody want to do that? Why? It's disgusting. Like, Harvey Weinstein can't possibly be sitting there going, she's into this. This is hot. This is great. Like, it's a very strange thing. So there's actually been a certain amount of research done into this. And, well, our guest producer, Travis Golightly, is with me on this one, as are most people in the freaking world, going, that doesn't seem like something I would ever want to do. What's the motivation that they talked about? They wish to be looked at and admired.
Yeah.
Do you think that's maybe because, like, look, Louis C.K., Harvey Weinstein, they're not exactly physical specimens. They're doughy individuals that probably don't stand in front of the mirror naked and go, that looks awesome. Do you think that's, part of it? Maybe they're secretly hoping, like, oh man, maybe this one female will really be into it. I feel unlovable. I feel disgusting. But, like, if I do this in front of enough women, one of them is going to, it's a perverse way of, kissing frogs to find your prince in reverse, if that makes sense, where they're looking for someone who's going to love them just the way they are. And that's their way of finding it. And is that a thing, do you think?
I don't really think so. I mean, but the thing is, and don't get me wrong, I don't understand women, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. And nothing I'm about to say has to do with that specifically. But I've had so many girls tell me, like, that looks are not necessarily the first thing that they look for. They look for a confident man. They look for a successful guy. It's stuff like that.
I got news for you. Travis. That's exactly what women tell ugly guys like you and me. They're like, that looks don't matter to me.
No, these were not girls that I was in a relationship with. These are just like, you'll talk to chicks about,
these are charitable
like,
females that are trying to fake and make us feel like we have a shot. Like, what you were talking to were kind females.
No.
Women like good-looking guys.
No, of course they do. Of course they do. Yeah. But I keep being told by females that it's not necessarily the number one thing that they have to have a guy with a six-pack and with a nice body and model looks, that it's not really that important in the sense. However, that being said, a guy like Louis C.K., a guy like Harvey Weinstein, it's pretty obvious that they don't have those looks. So in the same sense, why would they be trying to show off parts of their personality that a woman may not care so much about in one sense, but also it's not the best part of their personality.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other thing that they pointed out, and I think there's really something to this part of it, there's this weird type of plausible deniability in this situation where you could think to yourself, if you're Louis C.K., well, I asked and she didn't say no and I didn't touch her, so therefore it's all right. There's this weird kind of like logic of somehow this mitigates it. I did not touch her. I just sort of, did that in front of her. That seems legal, and
I do buy into that.
Because Louis C.K. excused himself in his sort of like long-winded confession of I did do these things. And I think he said at the time, I don't have it in front of me, but he said at the time I thought because I was asking permission, it was okay. Yeah. And, it was like, hey, I'm doing it. You didn't say no. That means yes. And it's just like, but he was in a position of power around other female comedians that admired him. And then also it's just like, it's a cutthroat business. And you're thinking like, oh man, I don't want Louis C.K. blackballing me or his manager blackballing me if I say something. And so therefore it, and he acknowledged they didn't say no, so I thought it was okay. I see now that that's not the case. I see that I was using, the power and influence I had to, basically do exactly the same thing as physically assault them. If you remove someone's defenses and force them to go through something that they don't want to, you can do that mentally or you can do that physically, and one's not any better than the other. But again, maybe from a strictly legal standpoint, there is sort of like this plausible deniability where, Louis C.K., what he did was wrong and disgusting. But in a court of law, did he physically I wonder if there's some actual legal mitigation to this behavior. Who knows? I don't know.
I don't know either. It's interesting. But you would think someone like Louis C.K. and all these guys, I'm not here to judge somebody to determine if they really do enjoy watching something like that, but it should be pretty obvious. If somebody does want to see it, there shouldn't be any question at that point, well, she didn't say no. Well, you know what? She wasn't begging for it either. She didn't make it very clear that she did want to watch this. I mean, that's a pretty big thing there, Well, I mean, and also it's like maybe these guys get lucky once in a while where like, oh yeah, I'd love to watch an old fat guy do that to himself. That's, because, there's all sorts of different people with all sorts of different tastes out there. And I think there was one female comedian who came out with her own Louis C.K. story where she was like, oh yeah, he asked if he could do this in front of me. I was like, I don't care. Whatever, weirdo. That's right. Okay. Sick little F. Fine. Yeah. And she wasn't bothered by it. She thought it was funny. But and so maybe stuff like that happened once and Louis C.K. went, aha, this now makes it okay because, she said it was all right. And she thought it was funny and she degraded me during it. Like, all women are into this. This means it's now acceptable as long as I ask. Which it's not. And that's exactly
obviously not. Case. Yeah. But I mean, that's maybe sort of like the twisted logic of the psychosis. I mean, doing that in front of someone who doesn't want it done in front of them is a disorder, obviously. I mean, there's exhibitionism to it, as for sure. Do you have any sympathy for Louis C.K., or do you give him credit for at least admitting what he's done?
No, not really. I mean, I'm not the nicest guy in the world when it comes to it's not that I don't forgive him. I couldn't care less what he did, but he didn't do it to me. I mean, it's still not right, but I don't need to forgive him. I just look at it and I'm like, what an idiot. I mean, seriously, what an idiot.
Yeah. What a filthy, disappointing idiot. Yeah. Pig.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So off the air, your friend and mine, our guest producer Travis Golightly, told me something really, really interesting about the state of Texas and tanning beds. Now, being happy, being pale, pasty, and doughy in general, the way I am, I'm not familiar with tanning bed laws, but why don't you just go ahead and tell them what you told me?
It's frustrating And it's really, I mean, it's not that
And by the way, the fact that,
big of a deal.
I don't know if you heard it when Travis was on the show a little while ago saying that he took a peptide, which, this naughty little peptide that is completely legal, but it bronzes you, right? You take a tanning supplement and you still go to a tanning bed. Like, how tan do you need to be?
I need to be really tan, but I'll tell you what, the state of Texas makes it very difficult. So the deal is... Okay, and it's slightly infuriating. So the law in Texas, and I'm not sure when this passed, and I would love to find out, and I would love to send a really nasty gram to everyone who voted for this law, all the congressmen and women that voted this into being. So from the time that say today I go to the tanning salon and I tan, there has to be 24 physical hours between when I get out of the tanning bed and get into the tanning bed tomorrow. So if I go to the tanning salon at 7...
Let me just cliff notes this so I can make sure I've got it right.
Yeah.
The government regulates the number of times you go to a tanning salon. You can only go once in a 24-hour period, and I'm assuming it's to protect you from yourself and the myriad of health hazards that one encounters when they put themselves in a tanning bed situation.
I would assume so, and so the thing that frustrates
is this really
me
a
about
government
this,
rule or is it just like whatever tanning salon you go to?
No, it is a government rule. The entity that oversees spas and tanning salons enforces this rule, and they do audits to make sure they come in and check. Because I had a friend who owned a tanning salon, and I was like, seriously, I'm like, when they passed the law, I remember him being like, this is just a real pain. He's like, we're going to have to upgrade our software and make sure it won't allow you to tan within 24 hours, that you have 24 hours between. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And they passed all kinds of laws at that point about like age that you can tan and everything, which is, I don't have an issue with that one so much, but I have an issue, in a very, in theory, conservative state like Texas. I mean, that just seems like incredible overreach.
Here's the thing. They're right. You probably shouldn't go into a tanning booth more than once in a 24-hour period, if that. And that's probably
whatever.
Too much.
But I mean, still.
But also, this is Texas. When I first came to Texas from New York, I wanted to get my sister some pepper spray. And they were like, okay, well, here's your pepper spray. And I was like, you don't even need to see my ID? They're like, no. And you have to show ID for pepper spray? Where you're from? Oh, you're from New York. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the exact words that were used to me in the sporting goods store where I bought my sister's pepper spray were, tell her to come down to Texas and taste the freedom. And
which is how it, I mean, I'm not trying to get, overexcited here, but that's what people think of extremely conservative states like Texas, is they think that, there's freedom. The government's not going to, overreach into everything that you try and do and try and, tell you what you can do and what you can't do. Now, the thing that bothers me is, say I go tan at 7 p.m. tonight, okay? And then I leave there and I go to the store and I buy 10 cartons of cigarettes and $1,000 worth of liquor. I go home, I can smoke all those cigarettes and drink all that liquor, and nobody's going to say a word to me. However, so help me God, if I go back at 7 p.m. tomorrow to try and tan, I'm going to have to wait 20 minutes.
Call the tanning police. Oh my God, that's amazing.
It's ridiculous.
It is it is ridiculous. I mean, this is like... Texans laugh at New York and go, the nanny state. Look, they won't allow the extra large sodas anymore. And, equally as stupid, like, because people are going to drink the sugary sodas. They're just going to drink them in smaller increments as much as they freaking want to. People are going to do what the hell they want because, this is America and they're Americans. You do what the hell you want and when the hell you want because, look, you suffer the consequences of your own actions in a place that's truly free. And that's wow, mind blown so much. So much to consider. So
I know, these are the very important things that I deal with on a daily basis.
Right. Have you ever tried to cheat the system by going to Dark Tan? What are the names of two different tanning salon companies?
So I tan at Dark Tan.
All right, Dark Tan. What's another one? I don't know about this stuff.
Oh man,
I'm very pale.
Something like I can't even think of it.
I don't know. So, like, say you go at 7 o'clock to Dark Tan and you tan. Can you sneak over to a different tanning salon that doesn't have you in the system?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So I used to. Okay, you know what? So I used to have a gym membership at what was it called? Blast Fitness, and they had tanning. So if I knew that I was inside my 24 hours and I wanted to tan, because I'm like, I tanned yesterday. So this is what I think, like, when I get off work, if I'm going to be out for 4 days, if I get off the tugboat and I'm going to be out for 4 days, I think, you know what? I better hit up that tanning salon in the morning. because if I go late at night, if I go at like 5 p.m., then the second day I'm going to have to go at like 5:30 or maybe 6. And then the third day I'm like, I'm not going to get 4 days of tanning in. So I literally have to plan out my days. I'm like, man, I better go tan in the morning on my first day. That way I can hit up a noon tan.
This can't be good for you. It's got to be really bad for you. And it's like, what about, like, do you ever spray tan?
I mean, I have before, but the thing is that
if you're so hell bent on not being the color that your Lord and Creator made you.
No. But think about this. Okay, so I work on a tugboat. I live on a sailboat. I'm outside all the time. Okay, and I don't tan well. That's why I take the peptide. So I don't. When I take the peptide and it causes me to tan, when I'm exposed to when I'm actually tanned, I don't burn. So I'm kind of doing myself a healthy favor here. In addition to looking
I've often
nice
wondered
and
about
bronzed.
that. A buddy of mine is like a professional surfer. He's the guy that one of the stations I'm on in California, Rock 105.3, San Diego's rock station. We have this guy that calls in all the time and does the surf report, and he's a pro surfer. And he's actually said the same sort of thing where he spends literally his entire life outdoors. And he was like, before I go, he'll do these things where his sponsor will pay for him to go surf big waves in Mexico for like 2 weeks. And he's like, before I do that, I got to get out and get what he calls, he says he's got to get out and get a base coat so he doesn't burn.
Base coat tan, exactly.
And I just thought that was such flawed logic. But I mean, this is a guy that's been, surfing his entire life and prepares for it by tanning. So, yeah, I guess.
Here's the deal. I'm not a doctor yet, so so I'm not like trying to like force some idea that I know what I'm talking about, because I don't. But all I do know is when I keep a tan year round and I'm out in the sun all the time, I don't burn. And if I go pale and pasty because I'm not tanning, the second I get out in the sun, I mean, like a gnarly, terrible burn, like really bad burn that they tell you don't get those kind of burns because it really increases your chance of skin cancer. So
it's funny. It just boggles my mind that in Texas or anywhere in America, one's tanning would be regulated by the government. It's funny because like
it is
the idea of freedom is trumpeted by Americans on a regular basis, and I can't remember the comedian that said it, but I used to think it all the time because growing up in England, you're a hop, skip, and a jump away from Europe. What's in Europe? Oh, Amsterdam. What can you do in Amsterdam? Literally anything you want to.
Yeah.
There's, prostitution's legal. Drugs aren't legal, but they're decriminalized, meaning if you have like a whole bunch of weed and ecstasy on you, you're not going to jail for it. They're just going to take it away from you and be like, now, what were you thinking? And apparently, there's a whole different conversation, but the logic is by decriminalizing drugs and things of that nature, crime goes down, violent crime goes down, and people become significantly less interested in doing the drugs once they don't represent any rebellion. And I relate to that because I drank heavily until my 18th birthday. And once it became legal, 18 was the drinking age in England, I stopped drinking because I was like, this is now about conformity, not about rebellion. I'm not interested in it.
Right.
So anyways, but there's this idea that we're so free in America. And meanwhile, in one of the states that purports to be more free than other states, Texas, you're not allowed to tan as much as you want.
So I guess that's the trick. I tan heavily. You used to drink heavily. I tan heavily. So the way to solve the problem of my heavy tanning is to make it legal.
Yeah.
So I won't do it.
Yeah. That's your punk rock moment. I'm going to go into a second tanning salon in 24 hours. There's nothing you can do about it, copper.
Such a bad boy.
such a badass. But I think, and I want to get the person right, I think it was Jim Jeffries who said, like, Americans talk about having freedom. In Amsterdam, I can do cocaine off of a hooker's ass in front of a cop, and it's legal. That is freedom. And, he
has a heck of a point there. I'm not going to argue with him.
Yeah, we're not as free.
You can probably tan more than once in a 24-hour period, too.
Yeah, if you're allowed to do a blow off of a hooker's posterior in front of an officer of the law, I would imagine that how many times you go to the tanning salon is small potatoes. Although you never really know. You never really know because there's weird laws, sort of like there's weird sort of standards of what's morally, legally, ethically okay between Europe and America that are very different. Like I tell this story often, but when I first moved to England from America, I was a little kid, like 4 or 5 years old, but I remember going, hey, there's boobs on TV. I've never seen those before. I didn't even know why I liked them. I just knew I liked them. And as I got older, I was just like, oh man, English TV has boobs on it. But I remember, do you remember the show The A-Team?
I never watched it. I remember the show, but I never watched it.
So it was this sort of cartoony show where a bunch of veterans existed as soldiers of fortune, and there was lots of machine gun sort of violence in it, and it was aimed at kids. And there was a huge brouhaha about this kids show, The A-Team, because, and same I think goes for Dukes of Hazzard as well, and all those sort of like action shows aimed at kids. They're like, this is terrible. Like in The A-Team, they're shooting at people with machine guns, and that's not something that we want our children watching. And also, when they shoot at these people with machine guns, their cars crash and they crawl out of them going, oh, I'm going to feel that in the morning. There's no real life consequences to the use of machine guns, and that's creating a very unhealthy, unrealistic depiction of gun violence. We're not okay with The A-Team. Meanwhile, there's boobs literally all over the place. There's boobs and curse words everywhere. Like in England, I think they stopped it a little while ago, but page 3 of several newspapers when I got there was just, the page 3 girl, and that was a topless female.
No.
Yeah. And it was a big thing. Yeah, I know, like they only did away with it recently, and they did away with it not because they were conservative, but because they were saying this is, an unfair objectification of women. It's unhealthy, but it wasn't like these are bad, we have to cover them up. It was like, this is not a healthy way for women to be portrayed, and this is not a healthy thing for young girls to grow up witnessing. But it had nothing to do with the fact that boobs are bad, you should cover them up, as it would have been in America. So I remember doing the comparison where I was like, okay, I'm living in England. Boobs are okay on TV, violence is not. Go back to America, I can see all the violence I want to, but I can't see boobs. I I was just like, I really prefer English television. There's
no kidding.
Here. But
yeah, I can lose the violence.
Yeah,
the violence doesn't mean that much to me.
yeah. It's just it's really kind of interesting. It's an interesting sort of dichotomy. What is morally, ethically, and legally okay from one place to another?
When I was living in the Caribbean, and I'm trying to think, both St. Thomas Virgin Islands and in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I'd be at the gym, and literally I'd look over and there's the weather on one of the TVs. And then there was like a basketball game on the next one. And then there was cockfighting on the next one. Like roosters. And you would be like, what in the world? Are you serious? I mean, they're showing the whole thing.
Yeah, it's completely barbaric and awful. And oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. God, that's not okay. That's disgusting.
No, I know, right?
But it's just, it's a hop, skip, and a jump away from bullfighting, which is still like this
somehow
this very
legal as
thing
well
that people do in Spain. Like they're such a civilized nation, except for that thing where they kill animals for sport in front of other people. That's revolting and disgusting, and a practice that needs to be done away with, as is cockfighting. It's just like, that's right up there, or right down there, rather, I should say, because it's plumbing the depths of humanity with Michael Vick.
Bad.
It's just like we locked Michael Vick up for that stuff. They should do the same stuff over there. That's crazy. It's insane. I do like when you get to Europe, like England was pretty lax about the boobs on the actual TV shows. When I went to places like Italy and Spain, which sounds really exotic, but bear in mind, it was like a short ferry ride away. You'd be sitting there watching TV in the middle of the afternoon, and on comes a shampoo commercial, and you see people shampooing their hair in shampoo commercials, but you also saw the fact that they were naked. Like you'd see boobs in shampoo commercials in the middle of the day in these countries, and it was always sort of, well, for a young boy, it was definitely an eye-opening experience.
Oh. These streets most every day, you're waiting to get washed away. Radio 104.1.
AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
So, we are, what are we now? 5 days away from Christmas? What's today? The 20th. Yeah, today's the 20th. We're 5 short days away from Christmas Day. Which means, you know what that means, Travis? That means that you got to get your shopping on. That means that if you haven't yet done it, if you haven't yet prepared for the moment where the large man of a rotund nature comes down the chimney with a sack full of toys, and if you're not ready for that day and you haven't done your Christmas shopping, you are precariously close to a gas station Christmas. You ever done one of those? Like, you get wiper blades, you get antifreeze, and who likes lemon scented? Don't be that guy or don't be that girl. But we are a few short days away from Christmas, and I thought it would be interesting to discuss a couple of things that we don't know, or at least we're not sure we know about Christmas. Like, are you aware of a soda pop bringing Santa to the forefront as a cultural icon?
I would assume it's Coca-Cola.
You would be right, and that's exactly the sort of thing that we're going to be talking about. We'll get into all these fun Christmas facts a little later on. Right now, though, let's take a look at the events of today in our segment, My Witness News. Travis, what is going on in the world?
Matt Lauer was the most searched person on Google this year.
Yeah. I love the end of year stats and statistics and figures. You get bombarded by all these metrics as the year winds down. As your year comes to a close, you, like I said, you're bombarded with stats, statistics, and figures. I talk professionally for a living. Which basically try to assign numbers to the events of the last 365 days. Like, what was that Hobbit-looking kid with the red hair who was the most streamed artist? What's his name?
I don't know. I have no clue.
Oh, come on. Red hair, Harry Potter, plays guitar. Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran was the most streamed artist of 2017, and we know that because we got fed the stats, and I'm sure Ed Sheeran would like to thank very white people everywhere. But the statistic when it comes to the most searched individual on Google is Matt Lauer. And when you consider this, it probably happened very late in the game. Like, he was probably nowhere near that until after Thanksgiving when all this news came out. Like, did you watch Matt Lauer on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade? He presented it with all of his co-hosts. Yeah. It was funny because I don't usually watch that, but for some reason I watched the whole parade this year. I was like, there's Matt Lauer being smarmy about, floats and things of that nature. And then just a couple short days later, he went from being like this family-friendly icon to, oh, that guy's creepy and disgusting. So you got to assume that all these Google searches happened after Thanksgiving. And
yeah, this surprises me. Like, I could understand if it had happened in the beginning of the year and then, like, it had played out for, like, say he was being sued or say he was facing criminal charges. But Matt Lauer over Harvey Weinstein? I mean, seriously?
Well, I think your average person doesn't necessarily know who Harvey Weinstein is. That's kind of an entertainment industry insider thing to know who Harvey Weinstein is. Like, people in show business would go like, yeah, he ran Miramax, he produced all these movies. But, like, Matt Lauer is on your TV every day, one of the most watched TV personalities. So I guess it sort of makes sense, but it's very impressive that he got that stat, being clean as a whistle all the way up till Thanksgiving. Matt Lauer, most searched person on Google this year. As in, hey, Google, who do I call if Matt Lauer tried to show me his junk? Ugh.
Oh.
Yeah. Go on.
Bon Jovi is going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, they're going to be inducted thanks to their innovative, groundbreaking, and record-setting use of Aquanet. How do you... Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Bon Jovi, worthy, yes or no?
No. I'm not a fan. I'm just, maybe they are, and I'm just not a fan, which is very possible. I'm not a fan.
I heard a Bon Jovi song a little while ago. Actually, like... So I'm on a bunch of different radio stations. One of them plays, not a lot, but a little bit of sort of, I guess you'd call it hair metal from the 80s. Like, every now and then they'll sneak in a Bon Jovi song, or they will play Poison or Motley Crue or something like that, and or Skid Row. And I gotta tell you, that sort of music kind of passed me by. I was a big Motley Crue fan because that was like the first concert I ever went to in like the 4th grade, and I saw Tommy Lee play drums upside down while there were fireworks going off and there were girls taking off their tops in the background, and I was like, this. I don't know how, but I want to do something with this in my life. I made my mind up at a Motley Crue concert. Probably a big freaking mistake right off the bat. But outside of Motley Crue, I didn't really know who any of those folks were, and I wasn't familiar with their music.
Yeah.
And I heard, what's that Skid Row song? Youth Gone Wild. You ever heard that song? There's Youth Gone Wild and 18 in Life.
No.
And I'm a guy that programs radio stations now. That's I've clawed my way to middle management in corporate America, and I'm a music director and assistant program director for some of the stations that I'm on. And I was like, if I got handed this Skid Row song today and thought it was something brand new, I probably couldn't put that on the radio fast enough. It was hooky, it was heavy, it was cool, and Sebastian Bach is the punchline to a lot of jokes, but remove what you know about these bands from the equation, and like a lot of that 80s hair metal stuff is garbage, and I guess that's why it hasn't made the cut. But maybe Bon Jovi's not as bad as we're saying he is. He did basically write songs that were the soundtrack to a lot of people's lives. There's so many people that will think back about Bon Jovi music and have unbelievably vivid memories tied to his songs, like people did for Tom Petty. That was the amazing thing about seeing Tom. I saw Tom Petty right before he passed away, and that was... I've been a Tom Petty fan since I was a kid. I remember I got this tape of my uncle on a radio station at Rochester, New York, WCMF, and he was doing a countdown show. I think it was like the top 82 of 1982, and like when I was 5, it was like, your uncle used to be on the radio? No, really? Yeah, here's a tape of him on the radio. And I remember listening to these songs over and over again, and that one Tom Petty song, You Got Lucky, was on there, and I was like, this is so cool. I'd never heard anything like it. The drums were awesome, the keyboards were awesome. It was just unlike anything I'd ever heard, and that guy's voice was so different. And so I'd wanted to see Tom Petty for years and years and never got a chance to. Finally did this past summer just gone by, literally a couple of weeks before he passed away. And I had a lifetime of hype built up in my mind from when I was 5 years old, thanks to all the songs that I've been listening to on a constant loop over the last 25 or so years. And man, they were so great and such a big part of my life. And I had so much, like I said, hype built up in my mind about what this show was supposed to be. There was no way it was going to live up to it, but it did. It was perfect. Every single note was perfect. And I think a big part of that was the fact that you're in this sort of like massive field of people, and he's singing the soundtracks to all of our lives. We all have these intense memories associated with these songs. And so maybe same deal with Bon Jovi. Maybe that's why they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Maybe so.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KBRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The Dumbing Up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So bearing in mind that we are just 5 short days away from Christmas, I thought we'd talk about some fun and reasonably obscure Christmas facts. Like, you know how people argue about the proper holiday greeting these days?
Yeah. It's so annoying.
It's a hot button of contention. And the whole thing is like, do you say Merry Christmas or do you say Happy Holidays? Well, here's the thing. There used to be an entirely different holiday greeting people argued about. It was a national debate back in the day, and we'll discuss what people were arguing over. It was Merry Christmas, or is it... Oh, what was the other option? We'll get into that later, because, we tackle big and important issues on this show. Right now, though, Travis, go lightly. Let's continue with the news. What else is going on?
All right, the Moody Blues are going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you familiar with the work of the Moody Blues?
I can't say that I am, and I know what a disappointment to radio I am. How do I not? I'm not a real big Bon Jovi fan. How do I not know the work of the Moody Blues?
Well, I mean, I know the Moody Blues because my parents were into the Moody Blues, and I inherited my parents' record player and record collection. So I actually had my parents' copy of the 45 of Moody Blues Nights in White Satin. That was their big hit. It was Nights in White Satin on one side and City City on the other side. Both excellent songs. And here's the thing. They kind of fall into the Hey Nani No Hobbits and Wizard region of rock and roll, of which I've never been a tremendous fan. But I do remember when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid going to school, not far from my school, there was this record store that would always have like Moody Blues displays in the front, like Moody Blues Greatest Hits, Moody Blues Remastered, buy Moody Blues on tape, CD, and compact disc. I'm like, why do they have all this Moody Blues stuff? And someone told me, like, Moody Blues owned that record store. So I thought that was kind of nifty. They took their Rockstar millions and invested it into a ma and pa record store. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess it's probably not there anymore, but congratulations on them getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you're not familiar with who Moody Blues are, like Travis, please consult your eccentric uncle who's super into wizards. What else?
Gwen Stefani says that she and Blake Shelton communicate through song.
Oh, well, I mean, that sounds trite, and that sounds overly saccharine, and that sounds like something that they probably don't actually do, but makes for a good headline. That said, I think it's infinitely better to most of the couples I saw in Walmart the other day when I was there picking up some Christmas gifts, who seem to communicate primarily through the use of the middle finger. So good for them.
Nice. Kylie Jenner's now charging $360 for a set of makeup brushes.
Oh, I'm sure it's well worth every penny. $360 for a set of brushes. You know what? Well, I don't know. Travis, you tan a lot. Do you know any? I know nothing about makeup, but I know women are willing to spend vast sums of money on it.
Yeah, I used to date this chick who did makeup, like wedding makeup for
professionally.
Like, yeah, professionally. Like, she was an esthetician, and then she would do makeup, like wedding makeup on the side and stuff. Yeah. I know she had expensive brushes. Were they $360? I have no clue. That's a really good question.
How much did she charge somebody to do their wedding makeup? Do you remember?
I don't know that either. No, I don't. I mean, I know, like, once she got going in it, like, I guess, like, the whole word of mouth thing, like, she was constantly, like, if she wasn't at work, and there were, like, probably a few weddings a month, I mean, she was doing a lot of wedding makeup. It was crazy how busy she was with it. She would do the airbrush stuff. She would do the brushes. She was like really into it. I know the makeup was expensive, and I know the brushes had to be expensive, but I don't know how expensive, and I don't know what she was making on it.
Man, have you ever like done TV or something where they ask you to wear makeup?
No. Well, I say no. Yes, I have. And it was awkward.
You're so
I didn't know how to do it myself.
Because you tan so frequently, you probably don't need makeup. Like, I think people wear makeup on TV to make it look like they're not washed out because the lights are so freaking bright. Like, when I was doing TV, they would be like, can we just put some makeup on you? It'll be so... I'm like... And I did it once. You know, it's weird because, like, all my friends that are in television, like, you know Ruben, right? Homeboy over at Fox. Like, I talked to him, so, like, if you're listening to this show in Houston, Ruben Dominguez, friend of mine, and we talk about this all the time. He's like, you just forget you're wearing makeup, and you go across the street and have lunch, and you do it wearing, foundation pancaked onto your face, because it's just an occupational hazard. It's a weird thing that people in TV just sort of, like, forget about. But I think once when I was doing TV, I had, like, makeup put on me, and it was so itchy and so uncomfortable. I was just like, I can't concentrate on what I'm doing because I just want to scratch my freaking face off. So kudos to people that suffer that particular indignity to go through life. $360 for a set of makeup brushes. Wow, crazy. What else?
Walmart's selling a fake Christmas tree that looks like a marijuana plant.
I was at Walmart the other day. It wasn't intentional, but I had that. Like, I went to a Walmart, which is, I wonder about this sometimes. Do you think, like, because whenever I walk into Walmart, there's just sort of like this initial wave of sadness that hits you when you walk in. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is. And I was like, is it the lighting? And, what is it that makes all these people look miserable and sad and like they've taken a couple wrong turns in life? And then I think the same thing about myself. I'm here. Are they thinking the same thing looking at me? Because I don't consider myself a person of Walmart, but just by nature, the fact that you cross the threshold into that environment, maybe you just immediately look 400% more like you failed at life when you go into a Walmart. I don't know. I certainly felt like I was failing at life by going there during the holiday shopping season. Wow, what a mistake that was. But I needed a gift for a kid, and you know what? They had it, and it was easier than ordering it on Amazon, and it was on the way home, so I went ahead and did it. But while I was there, I looked out for this. If you are looking for a non-traditional alternative to to a Christmas tree. Walmart are, in fact, saw one, a fake Christmas tree that looks like a ginormous marijuana plant. It's
wow.
It's really something. It's for the person whose holiday baking is not strictly confined to the kitchen. It's making a statement. Go on.
13 feet have washed ashore on the same Canadian beach in the last decade, and officials have no idea why.
This is actually kind of interesting and scary stuff. Disembodied feet, like feet, usually bones, sometimes with like shoes and sneakers still attached to them. And it happened. Yeah, it happened really recently. You spend most of your time in or around the water, Travis, and going to the beach. You live on a sailboat. You work on a tugboat, and when you're not doing those things, most of your recreation seems to center around things like driving dune buggies on beaches and surfing and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So, have you ever seen a human foot wash ashore at any of the beaches that you've been to?
Not a foot. No. I've seen dead bodies in the water, but
was that when you were a cop diver? When did you see a dead body in the water?
It wasn't when I was a diver, but yes, I was working like river patrol, and we got a report of a drowning that had happened. It came in as a drowning that occurred, like 20 minutes ago. And 20 minutes ago, it's no longer a rescue; it's a recovery. So you go out there and
that's
try.
Depressing.
Yeah, it sucks. It's not good, but it's one of those things. But yeah, so we found him and pulled him in. Yeah, so it's one of those weird things.
But you saw it in the capacity of being a member of law enforcement that knew they were going to recover a dead body. Like, this is not a normal thing. People don't often see this kind of thing just wash ashore. So, yeah, 13 feet have washed ashore on the same Canadian beach. It happened recently, like a week or so ago, but this is like the 13th time in a decade, and it's a very specific body part. It's the foot, and officials still aren't sure exactly why. For the record, though, I would like it to be noted that I resisted the temptation to say that they are, in fact, stumped. All right, Travis.
Wow.
Thank you.
Scientists say, yeah.
No. Let's do the Christmas stuff. We're rapidly running out of time, and I think we'll have an interesting one doing this. So, the big debate, right, is whether or not you say Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. Which do you say?
I usually say Merry Christmas, but I'm not going to lie to you. If I get any kind of greeting, I'm not the kind of guy that's easy to offend. If you told me Happy Hanukkah, I'd be like, oh, Happy Hanukkah to you too. I mean, I'm just happy that, it's a holiday season.
Especially if it was one of the days of Hanukkah,
Yeah.
We're the Goyim. We're not celebrating anything right now. You're having 8 crazy nights, and thank you for including us in that a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like, Happy Holidays, I don't understand why people get so bent out of shape about it, because it's like Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year is a long sentence. Happy Holidays is 2 words, and you're especially if you start early on. If you say that to someone around the time of Thanksgiving, you're covering Thanksgiving, you're covering Christmas, you're covering Hanukkah if it's in there as well. You're also covering New Year's. But even if you're so uppity that you're only going to acknowledge holidays of a Judeo-Christian infrastructure, saying Happy Holidays covers like a bunch of stuff. It's an expedient greeting, and I don't understand what the big freaking deal is. Anyways, besides the fact that we are going nowhere and nowhere quickly because people will argue about anything they're given an opportunity to argue about, as we argue about whether or not we should be saying Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, I think this is interesting. People argued over wishing you a Merry Christmas even 100 or so years ago. There was a cartoon from a 1916 copy of the Chicago Tribune that made the argument that we should be wishing people a cheery Christmas instead of a Merry Christmas, because merriment was associated with drunkenness, noise, and other bad behavior. Like, if you were being merry, you were a lout, you were a hooligan, you were a ne'er-do-well. So you want to be cheery, not merry, because merry is thuggish behavior, apparently, in 1916 in Chicago. Now you know.
Oh my God.
In England, they say Happy Christmas. When I was growing up there, I could never wrap my head around that. Did they really? Yeah, because they would also say Happy New Year. I was like, Happy Christmas and a Happy New Year seems a little. There's some redundancy there. Like, they say Happy Christmas, which, I mean, hey, there's no reason to get bent out of shape about it. But I was like, if you have a Happy Christmas, do you have a Merry New Year? They're like, no, you have a Happy New Year. I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
The one that always blows my mind is whenever like you're typing it out in an email or something, or and you put Merry Xmas. And people get all bent out of shape, you know, oh, you're trying to take the Christ out of Christmas and all this stuff. And it's one of those things that's like, okay, just calm down. I mean, seriously, just calm down. I'm not trying to take anything out of Christmas. And there was even some huge story and explanation that the X actually stood for Christ in some sort of back in the day or something. And I mean, there was some like logical explanation how it actually was not taking Christ out of anything, that it was an acceptable abbreviation and that nobody meant any harm in it. But you know, people are going to get bent out of shape about anything.
See, I thought Xmas was, you know how in some cultures you're not worthy of writing the name of God, like
yes,
yeah, like you it's G-D if you're Jewish, like, and you're writing that you're not worthy, so you don't write the whole thing. I thought Xmas was the same sort of thing. I'm not worthy of writing Christ's name, so I'm going to write X. I was just making that up in my own head. That's just an assumption I jumped to. And here's the thing: we talked about this a little bit on the show the other day, but Christ and Christmas. First, the shepherds were in the fields watching their flocks at the time of Jesus' birth. And guess when they do that? Not during the winter. Yeah. Christ wasn't born on Christmas, not December the 25th. Probably. Shepherds were not in the fields during December. There's that account from Luke, which suggests that Jesus might have been born in the summer or the early fall. December is cold and rainy in Judea, so it's likely that the shepherds would have sought shelter for their flocks at night as opposed to be hanging out. Christ was probably born in the fall or in the summer, and there was this religious cross-pollination. And there's been lots of instances of this with many different religions throughout time, but they moved the celebration of Christ's birth to December 25th, so it coincided with the already existing celebrations of the winter solstice. So, yeah, there you go. Did I offend your religious sensibilities there, Travis?
I'm not offended at all. You're not. You won't offend me at all. But, you know, it's just one of those things. It just goes to show you, even when with something like Christmas, you have to dance around it because there's always people who are just dying to be offended. And I'm sure that saying that probably offended them.
Oyster stew was a common dish at Christmas dinner.
I'm offended by that.
Yeah, me too. Oysters were apparently plentiful and cheap in the 19th and early 20th centuries, so a typical Christmas dinner would usually consist of some sort of oyster dish. And not only that, this was during a time where people actually put real candles, lit candles, on their Christmas trees. So, yeah, different strokes for different folks. We're all out of time. Travis Go Lightly, thank you so much for being here.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
You watch it, Buster.